Hi, I'm Noah Weisberg.
And I'm Doreen. So,
Welcome to Holland Estates. You're listening to episode number 600. We've hit a milestone,
woo!
Doreen. How exciting is that, eh?
Yeah, 600. The big
600.
600.
So today, Doreen, we're going to be discussing a decision out of Manitoba. It's the Hamm estate. It can be found on Canley for all of our viewers and listeners, and the citation is 2014 MBQB 14. So, Doreen, I think we should just, before we even get into the substantive of the case, why don't
Yeah.
we talk about the opening line? That's really what sparked our interest in wanting to read this decision, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. The moment I saw it, it was just one of those things where, okay, if I have to find a blog, do a podcast, this was going to be it because this is going to be a good one. The decision in Hamm starts like a novel. And the first paragraph of the decision says, it is a very risky business for a farmer or business owner to undertake an estate freeze without informing his or her spouse of the plan, and indeed without arranging for independent legal advice to have the ramifications of the freeze explained. It is even riskier to divest oneself of the shares and shareholder loan received from that estate freeze, again, without informing one's spouse.
So it should come as no surprise. What we're going to talk about today is estate freezes and informing one's family members.
That's right. That's right. Thou
So,
shalt tell one spouse.
yeah, or happy wife, happy life, as you mentioned in
Yeah.
your blog, right?
Yeah.
So, Doreen, do you want to just give a bit of context as to what the deceased did with the corporate shares, his family background, and we can kind of get into a bit more of the substantive?
Yeah. This is a decision from Manitoba, but I think the facts can apply all across the country, especially even in Ontario. This was a 41-year marriage where the husband was the first to die. The husband had a farm business. He owned the land that he farmed. That's where the couple lived. That's where they raised some of their kids at the very least. In the middle of this 41-year marriage, the husband decided to pass along his entire farm business to his sons.
A previous marriage, exactly. Sorry to interrupt you, Doreen.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's like the wrinkle that a prior marriage usually has to our estate matters and all of our disputes is that the husband wanted to transfer the business to the son from a prior marriage. There was also a daughter from the prior marriage, but it was something that both the wife and the girls in that family were left out of. So there was
Yeah,
one daughter from prior marriage, one daughter with this particular wife.
yeah, yes.
The sons were actually brought into some of the husband's legal meetings and accounting meetings when the estate freeze was contemplated. An estate freeze is just one of those very complicated and nebulous things that does require quite a bit of legal and accounting advice, because I think at the end of the day, the purpose of an estate freeze for the person undertaking that freeze is taxes.
Yeah,
And it's
and just very briefly, Doreen, let me just do a quick primer on estate freezes, right? The idea is that the freeze value of a company, the pref shares are usually left to the person running the business. Common shares are given to the future, and the whole idea is that growth accrues to the common shares. The individual who's undertaking the freeze generally retains control of the company, and the benefit is that what the tax hit's going to be when the person passes away, and you can start planning to ensure that there's liquidity and available funds to make that payment. That's often done by life insurance or other kind of secured investments to make sure that you can satisfy that tax hit.
That's right. That's right. So you're basically lowering the value of your ownership by freezing it at some early point in time, like well in advance of your death, usually, so that that tax hit is going to be much less. And then the people you're succession planning with in the first place, they would have always already received that value, that ongoing value. And hopefully they've always been participating in that business with you, and they'll deal with their own taxes in their own way. And that part will be outside of the estate. So yes, it is for tax purposes. And that's exactly what the wife was told, but nothing more. So the wife, she wasn't a part of any of these meetings. She still ran the company even like well after. She ran it until her husband died along with her husband, and she was the bookkeeper. But in this corporation that became created as a part of this estate freeze, all she was told about that corporation was that it was done for tax purposes. And nothing really changed in terms of how even the husband ran the business. He always still had his control. You know, he did what he wanted with the farm, and the couple continued to live there until he died. But none of this was made known to the wife until the husband passed. Until the husband passed, and she actually saw what was in his will, which is actually all these descriptions of the husband's ownership of this farm business after his passing, which was just his pref shares. And lo and behold, guess what? Those pref shares were also given only to his sons.
Right. So basically what happened is he undertook this, complex estate plan regarding the corporation and left his wife entirely in the dark. And so wife brings an application, and part of the application deals with equalization. It's a little bit different because it's Manitoba, and there are some issues as to limitation period and what to do with these corporate shares. And so really, Doreen, the judge found that, well, A, you shouldn't have left wife in the dark in the first place, but B, right, that the shares were to be part of the equalization.
Mm-hmm. So the wife managed to sort of get all of that value back in the husband's column, despite the fact that this is something that's been done, even 20 years prior to his death, and all because she was literally never told about it. And in the context of the marriage, you can see how that has wide application all across Canada, because at the end of the day, if you're going to give away a really significant portion of your own assets and you don't tell your own spouse about it, and your spouse is not going to have the benefit of all of those assets on your death, well, you're going to face a lot of litigation, and you might not be successful in court in upholding your intentions.
Yeah So the takeaway, as we kind of said at the outset, to put it simply, happy wife, happy life, but really it's about knowing when you should be informing family members of your estate plan. And there's obviously a very gray area of how big of a family you have and what you want to share with them. But certainly in a situation as undertaking an estate freeze, advising the spouse as to what's taking place would have been the prudent thing to do.
Right. And I think even for solicitors, you do really have an obligation to, I think, advise your clients to advise their wife and to encourage that they provide the wife with independent legal advice. And it really is just something that could really also help you in your file come later on, even when the husband is confused as to what had happened. Like, all of this helps you explain the transaction that you did with your client to your client as well as to their spouse.
Exactly. And if the client doesn't want to follow your advice, you're absolutely right, Doreen. You've got those in your file and you've had that discussion with them, and that should limit potential claims down the road. So I think, Doreen, that concludes our podcast. Until next time, we want to thank you for listening. I am Noah Weisberg.
And I'm Doreen. So
should you have any questions, please email us at webmaster@hollandhall.com or leave a comment on our blog. Well, Doreen, I really enjoyed recording this 600th podcast with you, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thanks. Loved this milestone podcast of ours. Can't wait for 601.
Yeah.